Welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Melissa and today I'm showing you how I make chicken paprikash. So your first step is going to be to poach 2 or 3 chicken breasts. I don't have footage of that because Mom actually poached the entire chicken this morning for me. And now we're just going to cut it into cubes. Now this has cooled a little bit. It's actually been in the refrigerator a little while. Normally I would just, if I was doing it myself, have actually done it right at the beginning and only let it cool about as long as it takes for it to be cool enough for me to handle without burning my fingers. Now I should probably note that I'm not entirely sure what qualifies a dish to be considered paprikash, and so this may not totally count because of some of the modifications I've made. However, chicken and tomato sauce just does not sound the same. So the chicken is all diced up and I'm just going to set this bowl aside and prep my other ingredients. Now, this recipe is pretty much a lot of stuff getting sauteed and then simmering for a long while. And what I like to do with anything that's getting sauteed or stir-fried is have everything that goes into the pan at the same time, all in one bowl. That way I can just dump the whole bowl, because usually sauteing and stir frying, once things start moving, it moves pretty quick. So the first thing we need is a pepper diced, and I'm using, you can obviously use a fresh one, but I'm actually using frozen diced peppers from our garden, and I don't even think it's a whole pepper. It's probably really only half a pepper. I usually don't worry too much about the amounts. If you don't have a fresh or frozen diced bell peppers, you can use like a tablespoon of dried pepper and just throw that in. The next thing it calls for is 2 tomatoes, diced and seeded, or cored and seeded, I guess. Again, I'm just using frozen from our garden. This recipe also calls for 2 tablespoons of paprika, which, if you don't know, is actually equivalent to 1/8 of a cup, which is really nice because if you happen to have a measuring set with that, you can measure once instead of twice. And the last thing that goes into this bowl is a small onion, also diced. Now, I'm not putting this in the bowl with that for a couple of reasons. First off, the bowl's getting full. Secondly, this is not frozen. Obviously, if you didn't have fresh onion, you could use frozen. And I don't like to throw them all in at the same time. In fact, I'll probably put the onion in first, because the frozen vegetables being covered in ice and everything, it just causes a lot of sizzling in the pan. And I prefer to avoid that, so I usually try to have something else in the pan before I throw those frozen vegetables in. The other thing we need to have ready before going over to the stove is a 1.5 cups of chicken broth. Now this doesn't go in at the same time as the other ingredients, but it does need to be ready before we start cooking, because again, once everything starts going, it is going to move pretty fast. Okay, so we're over here by the stove, and I'm just going to set my burner to a medium-high heat and let the pan start warming. And you can see my setup over here. This is how I like to do any stir-fry or sauteing recipe. So I have everything lined up pretty much in the order that it's going to go into the pan. I find that just really helps me to kind of stay organized. And I am just adding a little drizzle of oil to the pan. I believe that's grapeseed oil. You could also use olive oil. Once the pan is hot, add the onions and the tomatoes, peppers, and paprika. And then stir and allow to cook for about 5 minutes until the onions are soft and the in this case the frozen vegetables will have kind of thawed out and released quite a bit of juice. After 5 minutes, it's time to add the chicken broth and your diced chicken, and I just dump them in, stir to combine, and then bring the mixture back up to a boil. Once the mixture is boiling, put your lid back on, reduce the heat to low, and allow to simmer for 12 to 15 minutes. While the mixture is simmering, combine 3/4 of a cup of sour cream and 2 tablespoons of flour in a bowl. Alright, so it's done simmering, and now I'm just stirring in the sour cream and flour mixture. There we go. Now it is ready to serve. I will leave the recipe in the description, and thank you for watching.